It's that time of year again when we indulge ourselves with spooky things and try to frighten ourselves, all with the purpose of trying to remember why we shouldn't be afraid. But instead of having to wait until it's almost Halloween to get over whatever we're afraid of, let's take a moment today to really dig into fear and to create an understanding of what fear is and what you are so you won't ever have to be afraid again. Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Marcia Martin, the Heart Healer, and I am so delighted to share with you about who you are as opposed to what fear is. I want you always to remember that even though you may be feeling as though you are a victim right now, or perhaps you felt that you used to be feel or identify as a victim, or even if you're projecting out into the future and you think that perhaps you're going to become a victim, you are more powerful than anything that is going to come up against you. But you will only be so when you are aligning with the divine and you are honoring all that you are. So let's take a look at all the ways that you may have been brainwashed in the past to believe that you're not enough and that fear is somehow something more than you. So I know the news gives you every reason to believe that you don't have what it takes. And perhaps you grew up in a family that was filled with fear, or you're just talking with colleagues and friends, and they are reinforcing why it's important for you to be afraid. But you're not them. You are you, a beautiful, empowered, empathic being. And now, today, let's really dig in to how you can be an absolutely fabulous overcomer. So let's take a look at what fear is, where it comes from, what you can do about it, and who can help. Because it's so important to remember that we are never in this world alone. Even though you may not have the ability to see the helpers that surround you, you are always surrounded. So, what is fear? Well, fear can be confusing because it does have two phases. And that is, there are things that you should be afraid of. And I'm going to share with you as we move on in some of the things that are legitimate to be afraid of, to take appropriate action so that you will not engage with these things because they are an actual threat. But most of us spend most of our days in the second category, and that is those things we fear out of misunderstanding. So those things can be past history. Either you, someone in your family, or someone in your ancestral or cultural line has a history with this thing that you are fearing. Perhaps it's based on a superstition or over exaggeration. Yes, we all love drama. And sometimes, before we realize it, we're part of the drama and it is taking on a life of its own and causing us to go with it into a place that could be fear inducing. Thank you, Pastel Waves, who says it's the perfect timing for her. It is so important that we get real information instead of information that we might have picked up because it's the latest trend or because October is the time when we traditionally associate with fear, or probably the most powerful one are the superstitions that are repeated over and over and over again, and that we begin worshiping whether we are realizing it or not. So let's take a look at the difference. When we have unfounded fear, we have one foot in reality, recognizing who we are and the fact that we are empowered. And then the other foot is in that quicksand of, oh no, what's going to happen? If you get too enmeshed in the quicksand of, oh no, or what's going to happen, and you get out into the projection, you will forget I'm a powerful being. I can handle situations. Or perhaps you've never gotten to the place where you are able to interact with situations confidently, and therefore you think you're never going to be able. So, what we want to do is get you to feel able. So, where does that fear come from? Well, propaganda can be a huge source. If somebody has an agenda that they want you to get on board with, they're going to be okay with telling you lies or half truths so that you will develop a fear about this thing and look to them to be the reason that you can be saved. You'll forget that you are powerful and look to them to be your source of power. So I'm going to advise that you don't trust everyone, that you actually do your due diligence and make sure that whomever you're aligning with has your same value system and either has more experience in the area than you do or has knowledge that you may think would help you. Let's get away from these people that are trying to tell you information such as the world is a scary place and you have to be really on aware and on your game if you're not going to get taken advantage of. That is a half truth. The reason it's only half is because if you are aligned, if you are walking in the wholeness of your healthy self, where you are walking in love, joy, and peace, you automatically are creating around yourself an attractor beam and a deflector beam. The attractor beam is going to be attracting through the law of attraction more things that you desire, more love, more joy, and more peace. And at the same time, you're going to be deflecting the scary things, the dramatic things, the things that are more negative in nature. So yes, you should be alert, but more important than being alert is to make sure that you've cleared and healed your heart and that you are walking in divine love, light, and truth. Because then you are going to be at a higher resonance and you can walk right past something that's scary, frightening, or potentially harmful, and you won't engage at all. When you are in the place where you feel afraid or you feel fearful, you're going to begin attracting things to be afraid of, things to be cause you to feel frightened and small. And we are here today to make sure that you understand you can align with your higher self or you can align with the world self, which says, I'm not so much. I need to be afraid or I need to be small. So I'm going to encourage you, go higher, be in the place of inspiration where you are uplifted because you will naturally step into your courageous, strong self. So you got to use common sense. We're not throwing common sense out. This is not a cult where it tells you if you just follow this particular dogma that you're going to be okay. No, I want you to continuously use common sense. You do take safety measures, but you do not engage with fear reactions. So fear is always a reaction to the past or a projection into the future about something that might happen. It's very unusual for you to be in a present situation and be feeling afraid. Generally, if you are actually engaging in a situation that could be potentially harmful or fearful, you're taking action and you don't feel fear. You feel really tuned in and dedicated to getting things done. The fear might have been in anticipation as you're getting ready to tackle whatever it is. But once you're honed in on, I need to take action, the fear dissipates and you're just focused on the action that you're taking. So, fear is a past or a future event, it's not present. And now, I'm going to give you some examples of times when fear was generated by the survivors of events. And because they are survivors, because they went through it, because it was an unpleasant situation, they feel they have the right to tell you to be afraid because they don't want you going through what they went through. However, when they tell you about their situations and require you to be afraid, they're actually causing you the same problem that they're trying to prevent with their talk. And so, a couple of examples of this are fear of money, fear of food, water, or housing shortage. Whenever you're talking about fear, you're talking about being less than or lacking. So if somebody comes to you, and let's use the example of the Great Depression. I grew up with children of, so my grandparents would have been in the Great Depression. My, excuse me, my parents would have heard the stories and maybe have been subjected to the kind of saving measures that they thought were appropriate during the Great Depression. Now, when you are in a food shortage, money shortage, housing, maybe not having any, when you're in that situation, yeah, you know what? You got to really deal with what is. And you might have to stretch your food, stretch your money, learn how to make accommodating measures. But once you're out of that, if you are still living in the fear, you're making what was a reality come to you as your new reality. And an example of that is I grew up, and everybody I know that was raised when I was being raised was told things like, better save for a rainy day. God knows when you'll get again. Money doesn't grow on trees. Now, they thought they were instilling in us really great values, and it is wonderful to save, but it is not good to be in the mindset of lack. God knows when you get again. That's a very lack based way of thinking. Money doesn't grow on trees. Okay, you should not spend extravagantly. It's wonderful to to save, but if you are doling out that dollar and saying, oh gosh, money doesn't grow on trees, you've made it very difficult and energetically for that new money to find you. So, no, you don't want to spend everything in your bank account. You want to be wise. You want to use common sense. But when you are spending, spend saying, I am so delighted and grateful that I have the opportunity to spend this money. It feels so great to receive whatever it is that I want. I don't want you spending from the place of, oh no, I don't know how I'm going to get this money back again. Because now you're placing yourself out of alignment with receiving more. So you spend what you feel good about spending. You don't spend what you don't have. And you receive, wow, I'm so excited and delighted that I get to enjoy whatever it is I spent my money on. Or if it's a bill, thank you, whomever I am owing this money to, for giving me these services. I'm so grateful for these services. They make my life so much better. You don't want to pay the bill. Oh, I'm so angry that I have to pay. If you used the service, be grateful for the service. Point out the ways in which it's helping you instead of, oh, I have to pay this bill and I'm so afraid that the money won't come back. It can't get to you from that place. And you are not being your courageous, empowered self when you are holding that belief. You must let go of the money from a place of gratitude and then immediately look to where you're going to receive more. Where is that next source of money coming from? I know it's coming because I am a fabulous manifester and I am a wonderful receiver. So that's one area in which fear is really causing us a problem. But as I said, you got to be practical. I don't want any hoarding or overspending. You want to live comfortably within your means, and then you will feel constantly in that uplifted place of love, joy, and peace where what you need automatically flows to you. So, you want to depend on your angelic guidance, especially when money is going out. Call on your angelic support. Hey guys, show me where I need to be in order to receive more money. You don't want to be in your, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now place, because you're not going to be able to hear or be in alignment with their guidance. So, another example of this, where we are engaging in fear instead of engaging from our high place of connection, is widespread illness. And early death was the absolute reality for all of us if we lived many, many years ago. And around that, they built this big superstition founded on the reality that they were living about death. And then they started practicing these rituals that kept them bound to the superstition instead of climbing up to that place of freedom that you get when you are walking in alignment with your truth. Hey, Audrey, I'm glad to see you here. So, the superstition may have been, well, if we do a specific ritual, then we are much more likely to ward off death, because death is not something that happens, or illness isn't something that happens because of germs or bacteria or viruses. Death and sickness is something that happens from an evil spirit. So, if I do this ritual, I'll protect myself and my loved ones from this evil spirit. Well, we know sometimes you don't interact with the germ, or you interact with the germ and you're immune to it, so you don't get the virus or whatever infection is brewing. But it has nothing to do with the ritual unless you are so strongly aligned with that ritual, and it is so firmly your belief system that you are actually creating for yourself a law of attraction reaction. So if I believe 100% that this ritual is going to keep me safe, then I am sending out the energetic vibration that I'm not going to interact with this disease. And I automatically lift myself away from the negative place where the disease may be, up into a place of healing, and I'm allowing myself to receive healing. The fact that it's based on a superstitious ritual is not going to hurt me unless I start believing that unless I do the ritual correctly every 5 minutes, and then 6 minutes happens to go by, and I say, oh my gosh, I didn't do that ritual, and now I'm going to get sick. As soon as I start letting go of I am safe and aligning with I'm going to get sick, now you've opened the door to a whole new reality. So we want to stay away from superstition. We want to understand that our healing doesn't come because we did a ritual perfectly, but because we are allowing ourselves to align with the divine, and the divine are perfect and complete in every way, and that includes healing. So we don't want to get in that space where we are letting ourselves be small and letting something, or someone else be large. We want to recognize that it's our connection that is giving us the power. Let's recognize that they were probably taking precautions because they had no control, no scientific knowledge that it was germs that were making them sick, or perhaps poor food storage, no refrigeration, no proper cooking. It wasn't an evil spirit, it was a very physical reality that was doing the sickness, but unfortunately, they didn't have an awareness of that reality, and so they assigned it to an evil spirit. So, check your belief systems for any of these cultural beliefs, these superstitions, these societal or cult sort of conspiracy theory kind of beliefs. Sometimes they're going to be based in a reality. But if you are no longer in the same reality, so now we have good cooking, we have good refrigeration, we know how to wash our hands and to properly prepare things. We don't need to hold on to those rituals or superstitions about food because they no longer apply. However, they might have been something that would have kept us alive if we are living without any of this, without the scientific knowledge and the proper food preparation and storage. What you can always rely on is your angelic guidance, but you got to make sure that you're not tuning into the superstition. So take a moment before you ask for angelic guidance to just clear away all the heaviness and move your self up to a place of really beautiful, free flowing awareness. And that's where you want to ask for guidance from. If you're feeling that deep heaviness, chances are, if you don't clear that away, you're going to latch on to some superstition or something that is going present in the cultural belief right now. Oh, I thought we had a new comment. Okay. So I'm going to give you an example of a time when I had a right to be afraid because it was a situation where I could have gotten myself in trouble. But I did ask for angelic guidance, and I want to show you what I did so that you'll see the interaction or the dovetailing of the common sense and the angelic interaction. So I like to walk in the mornings, and that means that sometimes I'm going to, because I live in a city, sometimes I'm going to interact with people who are homeless. Normally, I can have lovely interactions with the homeless people, and some of them have become friends, and we have lovely conversations if I have the time. But there are times when those who are homeless also have some mental um, shortcomings. They're not quite present mentally. And some of these people may be dealing with forms of schizophrenia. So they are seeing or hearing things that are not present. And often these things appear to be quite demonic. So that means if you are out walking and you see someone who may be raving, this is not a good time to go up to them and try to be holding a conversation or interrupting whatever they've got going on, because they may not look at you and see you. They may look at you and see a demonic figure. This is not because they're bad or because you're bad. It's because of the disease that has taken over their mind. So I was out walking and I noticed there was a homeless gentleman we were going to intersect each other this way, but there was a street between us. So I had a choice. I could keep walking in his direction and intersect with him. But as I looked at him, all sorts of warning bells were going off. It was clear that he was in the midst of a delusion and he was angrily interacting with whomever he perceived to be around him. Now, the warning bells said, do not interact. However, I know that I have angels with me. So if I was foolish, I would have continued walking and said, well, the angels are going to protect me. And I would have made it very difficult for my angelic helpers to support me. But I like to use common sense and to rely on my angels for support and protection. So I chose to go down the street. The gentleman kept walking. Now, I also noticed as we were both approaching our curbs and had to make a decision, keep going or turn, that I caught his eye. I was the only one out at that time, and I caught his eye and I thought, okay, not good. You do not want to catch the eye of a person who's in the midst of a schizophrenic episode, because you have no idea how you're going to appear to that person, and they're not in control of their reactions, and you can cause them and you great difficulty. So I saw that I had caught his eye, and I chose to walk down the street away from him. I turned away. But at the same time that I did this, I also called on Archangel Michael. Now, he chose to go across the street, and I could feel that as he was pushing his cart across the street, he was still very interested in me, even though I had turned away and was going a different direction. And as I called on Archangel Michael, I could feel that suddenly between myself and this gentleman, there was now a huge angelic presence. So I keep walking, and they tell me cross to the other side so that I'm putting even more distance. So I'm walking down this side of the street, and he's coming across. So he's now over here, and I'm coming down this sidewalk. They say, go over here. So now I'm over here, and I get a chance to look back, just casually check over my shoulder to see what's happening with him. They have beautifully distracted him with something in his cart. Now I no longer exist for him. This is what happens when you call on angelic guidance and you follow what they tell you to do. Because I didn't insist on crossing the street and intersecting with him, they were able to get him safely to the other side and distract him with something in his cart and send me to the other side and have me walk safely down the street. It could have gone badly if I was stubborn and said, "No, I have to cross the street." You have to follow their guidance and understand that they want the highest good for all concerned. They're not going to put you above the homeless person. They're going to find a situation that works for both of you so that he received what he needed and I received what I needed, but we did not receive it in the same space, just at the same time. So that's an example of a place where I was starting to get the high sign. Ooh, this could be a potentially harmful, fearful situation. Take action. But instead of giving in to the fear, I listened to my angelic guidance. So, one of the ways that I could have overacted was to stay on my path and call 911 and cause this person horrible trauma. I don't know how 911 is going to react. I could start screaming, or I could be stupid and try to make friends at a time when he's not in the space to do so. So, what I want you to get from that is listen to your angels. But if you are coming from that fearful place, you're going to need to take a moment, clear it out, and then connect, because otherwise you'll be hearing the voice of fear. And fear can tell you to do some pretty stupid things. So be spiritually fit. Don't be spiritually afraid. Fear takes advantage of your weaknesses, any insecurity that you may be having, any lack of awareness or lack of connection, and fear starts bringing its agenda. What's its agenda? To keep you small, to make you feel that you're not capable, and you are. How are you going to become spiritually fit? Well, I want you to connect daily with the energetic realm. That's all of the beings, the angels, the archangels, the saints, the ascended masters. Connect with the divine through your heart center. You, me, and everyone on the planet have that divine connection. And let's remember who the divine are. They are your perfect parents. It doesn't matter that you may have had a bad role model in the parents that you had or the custodians that you had. You have the divine, and they're perfect role models. They're going to show you how to do it correctly. They're going to help you remember all that you're capable of and how very loved you are and how very safe you are. Halloween is this time when we start fearing, interacting with those things that we fear. People feared death, and they had good reason to, because back in the day when we didn't have a way to know if somebody was still alive, but perhaps comatose, or alive, but barely breathing, they buried people alive. And so it gave rise to the whole idea of zombies. They didn't even know that you could be breathing very shallowly or in a coma and still be alive. And so some people were buried alive and they would wake up and they would start trying to get out, pounding on the lid of the coffin or uh, making terrible thrashing noises. And of course, it made people very frightened. But these people were still alive. They had just been in a comatose state. They had no scientific explanation for what was going on. They had medical care that was quite primitive. Diseases were carried primarily by malevolent spirits, which could be um, goblins, or some of the entities that we see floating around, or ghosts, or other energies. Remember, there were still people, even when the veil was extremely thick, there were still people that could feel the energies and communicate with the dead. So they may have been saying things that others who didn't have these abilities interpreted as goblins or some other thing. So let's remember that there were always among us those who could feel the presence of energy, and they might have been sharing all sorts of stories. And the rest of the population is like, you're nuts. And then they make up a big superstition around it because they become afraid. Or the other great superstition is God is punishing you. Without an understanding of who God really is, and with only the religious viewpoint, which is mostly, for most religions, quite um, God is angry with you focus, you can believe some of these things. And that was their way often of explaining misfortune. Oh, it's God punishing you. Um, or you're mad because God is punishing you. You can't really see these things or feel these things, or talk to these energies. There's something wrong with you, and that's because God's punishing you. Now, another thing, what about being possessed? Well, if you've ever been bitten by a rabid animal, you certainly look like you're possessed. However, without the knowledge of what rabies is, and you are in a primitive culture, now you're coming up with demonic possession. And diseases like a stroke can make people believe that there is a malevolent energetic force that they have to be afraid of, when it was just something like a birth defect or a stroke or heart attack or something like that. So there are lots of reasons why these superstitions got started in the first place. And they served a purpose while we didn't have the knowledge. But it's time for us, with our thinner veil, our easy access to the divine, our absolute fabulous helpers, to move out of the superstitious space and into the empowered space, where we understand that we can make these great decisions based on our alignment and the information that we're going to receive from our helpers. But always, I like to share with you one who is, or at least one helper, who is most aligned with the job of protection. And I'm sure you've probably guessed, because of the story that I shared with you, it's Archangel Michael. If you find yourself in a situation where you are feeling afraid, and it's okay to feel afraid, there are certainly times when fear is appropriate. If you are in a dark alley, hey, you have no business being there, probably, and you need to get out. That fear is there for a good reason, because this is not a good decision for you. Or perhaps there's a natural um, weather pattern forming, a hurricane or tornado, a tsunami, something like that is on the horizon, and you are feeling afraid. Well, my gosh, yes, you should be feeling fear and taking appropriate precautions. I don't want you running out into the middle of the street in a hurricane or a tornado, or uh, driving in your car during these times unless you have no choice. So, fear is there for a reason so that you can respond appropriately and take action to keep yourself safe. However, if you keep putting yourself in the position where you are afraid and you just sit there, now you are not doing something that's going to help you, but you're actually doing something that can harm you. So, if you are feeling fear, take action by first calling on your angelic helper who will show you what inspired action you can take. And your angelic helper for today is Archangel Michael. Now let's remember his name means he who is like God. When you remember that God has a specific helper for you whose job is to protect you, and his name means he who is like God, we can no longer hold on to the belief that God wants to hurt you or harm you because God created a specific helper just for that job. Archangel Michael has the sacred job of ridding you from the toxic products you've created with your negativity. Now, notice that it's not God created them, you created them with your negativity. God is trying to help you rid yourself of them by giving you the support of Archangel Michael. Now, you don't have to stay in that place of fear. Instead, call on Archangel Michael, recognize he has that powerful sword and he is huge. He will come to you in his 11-foot size and protect you by creating a distraction, by giving you the resources that you need or the information that you need in order to keep yourself safe. There is no reason to fear unless you are doing something, saying something, or thinking something that is going to cause you harm. And if so, you need to change what you're doing. Take appropriate action. You are empowered, beautiful, powerful beings. I want you to stay in your place of power and out of fear by remembering daily to connect with the divine and call on your angelic support. Now, you'll notice that in the chat, I have given you a link to a download book, and that book is 11 Ways We Resist Angelic Assistance and What You Can Do About It. So it's free. You just go to follow the link, put in your email address, confirm your email address, and you will receive the book. I want you to have all the tools that you possibly can and to live a life that feels good. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for being here, for being a part of this, and happy Halloween. Next week, we're going to look at imposter syndrome. I think it's great, but since we're all gearing up to wear costumes and take part of the fun part of Halloween, that we look at both the fear, which was created all around these superstitions and this miscommunication and this misunderstanding. We look at both the fear and then how we may not be being our authentic selves. So until next time, everyone, I'm sending you all my love. And again, my deepest gratitude for spending this time with me. Thanks so much.